So thanks so much. I love actually speaking to clinicians and multidisciplinary teams because you get it, and I'm excited about the work that we're doing, and hopefully by the end of this conversation you will be excited as well about the work that we're doing and how we can collaborate to meet the needs of the folks that we are all mutually serving. So today I want to talk to you about what is loosely a kind of a clinical pathway of programmatic. It's, we're not a clinical organization, but we're a program service organization. And so we're really doing, we have kind of like a programmatic pathway for our early stage clients. In case there are some folks on the call who aren't from the area or aren't familiar with CaringKind, just to level set, we're one of the oldest charities in the country that have been serving individuals and families who are impacted by Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. Very high level, our goal is to be a trusted partner throughout people's journey to create and implement best practice, research-informed, evidence-based quality programs, to equip caregiving staff, professionals, community, and to advance awareness and the field. And the way that we do that is by hosting, a plethora of programs and services that you can see kind of categorized here. And these programs and services include options for individuals who are living with a dementia, with their caring family members and friends, the care staff, researchers, professionals who support them, and for dementia-friendly partners in our local communities. And our programs and services are delivered in a variety of ways: one-on-one sessions, small group programs, education seminars, webinars, targeted trainings, and special events. We deliver services in person in various locations around the 5 boroughs and virtually across the country. And we have specialized services in multiple languages and for those in a variety of cultural communities and other affinity groups. Important to note, we are a standalone community-based organization. We're not affiliated with a health system, an academic institution, et cetera. We are standalone, and we survive on donor dollars and philanthropy, and with great thanks to the robust fundraising efforts of our development team. All of our services are free of charge to individuals and families who are impacted by these diseases. And we hope to be able to continue to do that in the future. So today I want to talk to you about our early stage programs. And here's a quick laundry list for you. I'm going to go through those in a little bit more detail so you've got an idea about what they all look like. But then I want to really kind of show you how one program kind of flows into the other. So this is my attempt at a bit of a flow chart for you to show how our early stage clients move through our services. And I think you'll be able to understand kind of why we tend to shepherd people in a particular pathway. But I want to also point out that our early stage programs are just one subset of things that we do. And so we're working with people in the early stages and people living with dementia across the continuum, people who can actually, who can engage in activities outside of the home. We have other supports and services for them kind of through our connected living programs, and I'll highlight those at the end. And then obviously, as people's symptoms progress, our work continues to focus more and more on support and education and coaching for the caregiver along that continuum all the way through the death of the person and then even afterwards while they're in a bereavement period. So I want to start with cognitive stimulation therapy, and we're going to do a bit of a deeper dive in here. I promise I won't do the same depth for all of the services I'm going to highlight, but I'm going to use this kind of as a case study for you as well to see, so you can have an understanding of kind of what we're looking for in a program, the evidence that we're relying on, the way that we assess the value of our programs, and the way that we assess the outcomes. And so cognitive stimulation therapy, what is it? We call it CST for short. CST is actually an evidence-based group therapy program for people with mild to moderate to early moderate dementia. It was developed and evaluated by Dr. Amy Spector. This work comes out of University of College London. And since it was created over 24 years ago in 2000, CST has been implemented in over 35 countries. It's been extensively researched, which I'm going to show you, lots of randomized control trials, lots of iterations of it, to the point that it's now recommended in the UK as the primary psychosocial intervention to be offered in the memory clinics. It's the first thing when you get diagnosed, you get a referral for CST, and CST has been rolled out across the country through their equivalent of the area agencies on aging. I want to give you a little bit of a background on CST because I think that it's helpful for the context. So in the mid-1990s, a little bit of a history lesson here, there was a growing interest. Some of us date back to that point. There was a growing interest at that time in non-pharmacological approaches in dementia care, and a growing desire for non-pharm interventions to undergo kind of rigorous evaluation and randomized controlled trials like the emerging drug therapies. Sounds similar to where we are today. And in the UK, there were two aging researchers at the University of College London who were really championing this effort. And that was Martin Orrell and Bob Woods. And they decided to submit kind of our equivalent, of a big NIA proposal to evaluate a non-pharm intervention. And no great surprise, they didn't get funded. And so they collaborated on an editorial piece, which really became a sort of a manifesto for their cause. And their key arguments were that, non-pharmacological, psychosocial, or what they called psychological therapies should be considered as serious competitors to the drugs that were coming onto the market. And at the time, the studies to date were really low quality studies and that they needed to be improved and fully funded so the research could be demonstrated. They recognized that we needed better instruments. We still need better instruments, but we needed good standardized instruments that could measure a whole range of outcomes, including things like quality of life, in order to compare the efficacy to the drug trials. And that the funding bodies really needed to encourage large-scale, robust, multi-site studies and to do the cost-benefits analysis. We all know, how expensive the current, treatments are on the market now. And so I think, again, this is a really relevant conversation still today. So that was back in 1996. A year later, after they had this manifesto, they applied again and they got their first round of funding. And then a number of additional grants followed to support the first randomized controlled trial of cognitive stimulation therapy. And key findings were significant improvements in cognition, as demonstrated on the mini mental, the AD-COGS, and significant improvements in quality of life. And I'm not going to go into the details, because you all can do the little review to get this information, but it's robust. And they were actually comparing CST then to the drugs that were available at the time. And, what did we learn? We learned that CST was as effective as Residine at the time, the drug that's no longer approved, and that it was substantially better than Exelon and Aricept. So again, cognition was shown to be, as good as the drugs, and number needed to treat, for those of you researchers in the office, was 6 needed to be able to be treated in order for 1 to be able to approve. So really great, stellar outcomes. Fast forward 20 years, 2023, we had a Cochrane review on CST demonstrating that it was level 1 evidence for CST. And if that's not enough, here's another systematic review in the meta-analysis from 2024, also showing the efficacy of this program. So this is a robustly studied, this is a good, solid intervention. Why is it why is it happening in 35 countries across the world? Because it's actually really good. And you're going to hear some testimonies about it. And people absolutely love this program. I love this program because it's an easy onboard for people. This is not about talking about your experience of living with Alzheimer's. This is a group program where you are focusing on improving your thinking skills and optimizing your thinking skills. And we all want to do that. So it's a really easy entry for folks. So what is it? CST is delivered in a small group format, either virtually or in person, 5 to 8 participants, generally 2 trained facilitators. There are 14 themed sessions that are delivered twice a week for 7 weeks. We do it both in person and virtually, and we added an introduction and a closing session kind of based on our lessons learned, where we invite care partners to learn about what the intervention is so they can feel confident of and comfortable with their person being involved. And then we recap at the end. Once participants graduate from CST, they roll into what's called a maintenance group. And so the idea here is that we're stimulating cognition, we're optimizing cognition, and then we're maintaining it as long as possible. And the maintenance group runs for 24 weeks. And I'm going to show you some of our outcomes. But here you can see the themes. It's a protocolized program. There's a manual that goes with it, etc. Each week, the meeting structure is the same with a main activity that changes based on the theme of that session. This is not rocket science. There's an introduction. The group chooses their own theme song. They sing the song. There's a current events article that gets discussed. There's a main activity, and then you wrap it up with closure, get ideas and feedback for the next session, acknowledge everyone's effort, and then say, off to the next session. The people who are facilitating CST, in the UK, it's generally licensed professionals, psychologists, occupational therapists, speech therapists, people with advanced training. In this country, we're doing it. We're training people a little bit more robustly who have lesser degrees, who they may have those licenses, but also we train aging services staff and people who have different skill sets. And the key to this is really being able to facilitate a group and to be able to deliver an evidence-based structured intervention. And the CST facilitators are really guided by these 18 key principles that you see here. And I've actually clustered these into 3 from a training for training purposes. For when I'm a master trainer, and so when I'm training new facilitators, I think it's a little bit easier to think about these themes related to stimulating cognition, different facilitation techniques, and creating a therapeutic environment. And each one of these key principles has, history and reason as to why they're critical. What sets CST apart from other interventions, and I've trained in a host of them, and so I can say that, personally as well as professionally, there is a strong emphasis in this on stimulating cognition. And let me highlight, a couple of principles to illustrate that. So during CST, the facilitators are guiding the discussions and the activities to stimulate different types of cognitive or thinking processes. And so the first aim of CST is really to provide, a robust level of mental stimulation. In other words, we're trying to get people's minds active and engaged. We focus on their strengths, on their retained abilities. We focus less on facts and right and wrong answers. And discussions focus on people's opinions rather than facts. And session activities are designed to encourage new thoughts, ideas, and association. We recognize that everyone has different skills, so we use different types of activities to stimulate different types of cognitive or thinking processes. And then over the course of the 14 sessions, a participant's kind of whole brain gets engaged in exercise as the activities build on one another. And so then through repetition and cognitive exercise, we reinforce neural pathways, and really the participants also gain the benefits of kind of peer-to-peer learning in an errorless learning environment with a social experience. So it's a really, kind of well-rounded experience. A lot of dementia programs are focused on reminiscence and get people talking about things from the past, and that's great. It's a wonderful program, really enjoyable. Reminiscence relies more on accessing long-term memories, and the goal of CST is actually to continually encourage new ideas, new thoughts, new associations, rather than having people just kind of recall the past or previously learned information. And we do this by asking different types of questions, by asking people to give their opinions and thoughts on a topic, by including activities that are designed to generate new thoughts or to associate thoughts in new ways. So we launched our CST program in April of 22 on an ACL-funded project, and at the end of 2024, we completed 38 groups, 78% of them were virtual. We did we did outcomes measures on 227 people. 72% of the people in our groups were what we call completers, which means they attended at least 12 out of 16 sessions, which that completion rate is super high. And our people who were living alone with dementia even had a higher rate of completion. And I want to just share a few things about our outcomes. We actually, community-based organization, we know CST improves cognition. We're not doctors. People have been through testing. We don't need to prove the cognitive gains on this. So we thought we were actually wanted to focus on kind of some mood gains. And so for our program, we measured mood using the geriatric depression scale. And here you can kind of see some of our data. We had 122 participants that completed the GDS pre and post. 48% had an improvement in their signs of depression, and 21% improved out of the score of depression into a non-depressed range, which we're pretty excited about that. Would love to compare that with some of the outcomes on some of the antidepressants, but really great. And then you can just see here, some quotes from our participants by sharing thoughts and others. It's slower for me to deteriorate. They actually feel, the change and how helpful it is to be in this program. We also did a measure called the Positive Psychology Outcomes Measure, 126 participants. We had baseline and final for. Again, 55% of the participants had an increase in their score from baseline to follow-up, and 18% improved their score into a higher range. So I show all of that, basically, again, let me wait, got ahead of myself. So after people finish that initial course of CST, they roll into maintenance. We've also got some maintenance data here I want to show you. But again, that's 24 weeks. They meet once a week. People can continue in maintenance. We've had people who have been in maintenance now for 2 years, 2+ years, and are still doing really well. And so people can kind of repeat that 6-month program as long as it's the right fit, as long as it's still, it's still meeting a need, and it's a good match. For maintenance CST, we use the Warwick Edinburgh Mental Wellbeing Scale. And we like this because it has population. It has population scores, and so we can compare to the general population. And so again, we're still seeing, some increase in well-being for folks through maintenance. 43% had an increase, 13% improved to a higher range, 7% maintained the highest range of high well-being, and 58% maintained. And what I have to say here about this is, remember, we're dealing with chronic progressive fatal disease. And so for us, maintaining well-being at a positive state, that's a win. People should be declining and they're not. And so that's exciting. And when we look at this, we compare these scores to the general population. They're basically the same. There's no significant difference between the well-being of folks in this population versus the general. So that's exciting. But I thought I would, just give you a minute here from one of our participants. I'm going to show you a couple different video clips these come from our Dementia Act 2 program, which I'm going to get to. But let me introduce you to Ellen and have you listen to her.
I didn't realize how much the diagnosis took away my voice and my self-confidence. Honestly, I was ashamed of my disease and that I have it. I found cognitive stimulation therapy to be most helpful. When I took the class, the varied discussions and activities touched on many parts of my thinking, not just my memory. I was able to see that I have so much that I still can do. It opened my eyes to what I can do. It reignited my curiosity on what is possible and away from my doom and gloom about what I've lost.
And that's a pretty common experience. Again, like I said, CST it's a great program. It's a great onboarding program because you're working on, your thinking capacities, not necessarily about adjusting and living with your Alzheimer's diagnosis. Some people come in, they're ready to go. They're ready to, they're at a different level of readiness. They want to talk about their experience. They want to, be in kind of more of a support group type of an experience. And so that's our Journey Together program. So sometimes we, Traditionally, the bulk of our folks will start with cognitive stimulation therapy. Many of them, it's the first time they've ever met anybody else who's living with a cognitive change. And so they begin to open up, but that's not the point of CST. And so people tend to roll out of CST and they'll continue with maintenance, and then we'll recommend that they do journeying together. So this is a kind of again, small group intensive. It meets once a week for 60 minutes, small group, 4 to 6, 7 people, virtual or in person. And then you can see kind of the topics each week. There's a different topic that they discuss, and different activities around living with the changes, connecting with community, a little bit of understanding what is it that they're living with, how does that impact their relationships, how do they address with their own grief and loss, etc. And let me let somebody talk to you about their experience of this group. So this is Michael.
I needed a lot of information. The Journey Together course, led by social workers at CaringKind, was the ideal resource for me. It helped me to begin to understand this baffling disease, my emotional reaction to it, and the various ways to cope with it. It also offered me something that I didn't know I needed, the opportunity to meet and connect with my peers. I desperately needed to meet others going through what I was, and truly, deeply getting what life with Alzheimer's actually feels like. Not like my dear and loving family and friends who so want to take care of me and do so in many vastly important ways, but cannot actually walk in my shoes. Finding your peer support has been beyond helpful because this is an isolating illness, and being with others is comforting and inspiring. When you're in a group of people who have Alzheimer's or another dementia, our diseases may manifest individually, but we are inspired. We're supportive, patient, and understanding with one another. In the group, no one loses their temper or raises their voice. It's completely different reception because we know we're all together for a reason. As a collective group, we listen and immediately forget, and yet no one gets distressed by that. Getting connected to someone who's living with this is critical. If you get cancer, you're immediately connected to a cancer survivor. If you're an alcoholic, you go to a group and get a sponsor. Where's my sponsor? Meeting the other people with dementia has truly been transformative for me.
So hopefully you can see, a little bit of how this is beginning to flow, right? People start in CST, they go on into maintenance, and then they, may go into a journey together, or they may actually go into a program that we call kind of To Whom I May Concern. And To Whom I May Concern, we've got about 5 videos on our website of performances that you actually can watch. The link is here. So again, these are small closed group programs, 4 to 10 people. They meet 8 to 10 times. And this one is really a facilitated group discussion on what's it like to live with cognitive changes. And then those stories are crafted into a script by the group facilitators. And there's an iterative process where they go back and forth. They're shaped into letters, and then they actually read that in a Reader's Theater style performance in front of invited family, friends, etc. And so here you can see, the goals of To Whom I May Concern here, and I'm not going to go into these details because you've got them. But kind of here's a little bit of the program roadmap, which I just walked you through. So they start meeting, they start sharing stories, they begin to draft a script, they share back and forth, and then they have the performance, and you can see some actual photos of that here. This work came out of a PhD thesis of a woman named Maureen Matthews, and what she identified through this process was that there's really kind of 5 common themes that come up when people are that are adjusting to their experience. And so they're kind of crafted into a little bit of a form. So each script will have stories that relate to these themes. And then I've just given you some examples here. They're crafted into letters to make them a little bit more not depersonalized, but they tell the story without in creative ways. So here's Dear Monkey Wrench. I see you lurking over there getting ready to mess up my day. But you know what? One of my life's philosophies has always been, when you see a monkey wrench, toss it aside. These days, my whole house and life are full of monkey wrenches. Dealing with cognitive changes is like having a smorgasbord of monkey wrenches, but I stick to my philosophy and toss them aside one wrench at a time. And so here's some examples in here. But I want to give you, do a little bit of a case here. This is a gentleman, his name is Gary. When he first started CST, he didn't talk about any of his memory problems through that program. He started opening up a little bit more and actually naming the fact that he had had a diagnosis, and then he ended up doing To Whom I May Concern. And this is one of his letters, and you're going to see his son and his wife, the back of their heads in this.
Dear kids, I don't think I've ever had a proper conversation with you about my Alzheimer's. But I'd like that to change. Then again, who knows? Maybe I did. I can't remember. So I want to make sure that I share some important things with you now, in this moment. I want to tell you, and it's a gift, that we talk about this. That I trust you with this. I trust you that you will continue to walk with me. Even though I'm not me, not really me, even though I am, I want you to be able to claim your own strength and ability. And to know that you are stronger than I am. I have faith, hope, and belief in you. I'm not a religious person, but it's something to think about. We must say the things we want to say, those we love the most. Who knows? Maybe those weekly meditation sessions at the Rubin Museum have inspired me. That's why I wanted to share these thoughts and words with you. So let's talk about this more, if you want.
So it's pretty powerful stuff. And I have to say, it's such a privilege to actually be a part of an organization and to be able to host programs where people can go from such an extreme, really, of denial to being able to facilitate and foster that kind of conversation and deep meaning in a person's life. It's quite a privilege. And again, I share those for you because this is the work that we're doing, and it's transformative, and we want to get it out to as many people as possible. So in that program, in the audience, we have people write down 3 words that come to mind when they think about somebody living with dementia. And then after the Reader's Theater piece, after they, share their script, we ask them again. And here's, just a couple of word bubbles about how those words change over time. And so it's a transformative experience for the people in the group. It's a transformative experience for the people who in the audience who are hearing this. So really, really exciting program for To Whom I May Concern. So you can see now, that's what we've got a pathway, that we're kind of creating that prepares people to get to the point where they are at that level of adjustment in their disease process. And then there's this empowerment that happens. And so we found, then what? I've been doing this work for a long time, and now people want to make a difference, and they actually want to, change things. And so we kind of have the next level of programs that people, again, start to roll into, and that's these Beyond the Script Dementia Act 2, and I'll get to a couple of other ones. So once people do To Whom I May Concern, again, we kind of keep them, the opportunity for them to stay connected. And so we have a monthly gathering of those folks who've been in To Whom I May Concern, where they continue to kind of explore creative ways to express themselves through poetry, et cetera. And again, it's just to foster an ongoing social connection, community, for those folks to build their social network, and to continue to thrive in meaning and purposeful living. And we've been inspired over the years of, there have been a lot of advocates who have championed the change for people living with dementia. And this is when, we believe that kind of this is when we will really see the change, is when people with lived experience start stepping, have the opportunity to stand up and to share their experiences, and to change policy and to change care practices. And so our Dementia Act 2 program really builds on that To Whom I May Concern program. And so this is a program that we crafted, kind of graduates of To Whom I May Concern, who wrote a script that's really targeted toward healthcare professionals like yourselves. We'd love to, figure out how to do this with you all. And the videos that you've seen are actually, we just did our first virtual work of that. And so those are some snippets from Dementia Act 2. So this is a grand rounds event. Starts with, we've got a geriatrician, palliative care doc, who kind of gives an update on where are we in the field. And then we have about 20 minutes of this lived experience panel who shares their experience of what would be helpful. And then there's a Q&A that follows. And again, certain goals that we have here. I'm not going to go, through this deeply with you all. Again, certain themes that came up through the process of this. And then, again, just some, really powerful quotes and experiences about this. I think I have one more. Well, maybe Paula didn't get in here. Again, so, we've come to terms with our diagnosis. And, it starts really with, we've talked to other people, we've learned some things along the way, and we want to tell you what would have made our experience better, because if we don't tell you, who will tell you? And so, that's kind of the basis of those conversations. And again, we have evaluated this program before and after with the 3 words. And so you can see this was data from over 575 people who have been in this program. And you can see we're transforming and changing kind of the perception of that. But then we've also do kind of a retrospective survey where we ask people, now, how will this affect your practice? And so 3 themes that come up is speaking directly to me, and kind of giving it to me straight, getting me connected to peer support, and getting my family and friends to ongoing support, education, and planning. And we ask the question of how frequently, before this event, how frequently did you do these things? And now that you've kind of heard this event, how frequently will you do these things? And so you can see these big blue bands are, we're really shifting intention to change practice. And so really exciting outcomes from that program as well. For time's sake, I'll do this quickly. This is just a great customer journey here. This is Ronnie, started in CST, went into maintenance, did To Whom I May Concern, did Journey Together, does ongoing Journey Together maintenance. His wife wasn't really connected to us at all. And so he and his wife started doing some Connect to Music programs. And then he actually suggested that his wife join Partnering Together, which is the caregivers version of Journeying Together. So that kind of 10-session adjusting program. He actually advocated for his wife to get involved in that, and now she's in that. So we're really seeing also our early stage programs are a way to kind of connect with caregivers early. So what's coming? We got a few things that are still, we've identified as needs in the pipeline, and so we're building out a few things that are really on this kind of this farthest end. So people who are progressing, what's this look like? And so we're starting in January. We're doing our first pilot of the program that's called Compass. This comes out of University of Reno, Nevada, Jennifer Carson's work. So this is actually a chronic disease self-management course for people living with dementia. So this is a 6-session. It's got a beautiful guide that goes with it. And this is really about helping people to set goals, plan their lives, implement strategies, et cetera, just like chronic disease management programs for other diseases. And then we piloted a program called Make It Matter, which is kind of producing what we call our influencer network now. And this is, again, creating opportunities for people with lived experience to be able to do something to make their experience matter. And so this, for me, is personal, goes back to a relationship I had with a woman named Jerry Taylor, who many of you may know. Jerry was one of my early mentors from about 10 years ago, who worked with me on a lot of program development. She really inspired me by saying, it's all about purpose. Everybody's got to have a reason to get up in the morning, and we need to find opportunities for purpose for people living with dementia. And so our influencer network, we've got a kind of a training program that really talks about what's it mean to be an influencer, why does it matter? We used to call people stakeholders. Now, we're trying to raise the voice of people with lived experience, and then helping them to both identify what are the opportunities and then really what might align with their priorities. And so here's some examples of that. We've identified certain roles that people can actually engage in, and different opportunities and activities that align with those roles. So again, what are the goals here? It's really aligned with that, nothing about us without us, my voice, my choice, my priorities. And we really want to build a coalition of stakeholder influences, people lived experiences, to influence services, programs, care practices, researches, policy. We all need research participants. We all need, people to be involved in focus groups and to shape the future. And how do we prepare a real coalition of those folks? So that's the goal kind of the influencer network. And again, this is just another, a gal that I was part of a PCORI project on, where we were working on training researchers and people living with dementia to co-partner on research. And that culminated in a research project on palliative initiatives, and Teresa Webb writing a book on advanced directives and advanced care planning with Dr. Ian Kenny. And so again, I put this in context. These are all the early stage programs that we have, but we've also kind of underscoring those. We have what we call kind of the umbrella of our Connect to Living programs, which are really kind of social engagement programs for the dyad. Again, so that once a person is graduating out of those early stage programs, there's still opportunity for them to stay engaged in social and meaningful connection. And so here's, we could do a whole nother talk on what those are. But again, you don't have to know those details. Basically, once the referral comes in, kind of we're shepherding people through this process with our programs and with other programs. So who should you refer? What does that look like? So an ideal early stage candidate for us is someone, we want a dementia diagnosis, because if it's a pseudo-dementia or if it's, depression or something else, that's ultimately, we're not the best resource for them. And so we're looking for someone with a diagnosis. Early stage programs, that's really about a person's ability to engage in give and take conversation. They need to have adequate vision and hearing. They need to have an activity tolerance of about 60 to 75 minutes without the care partner. So, we need them to not be exit seeking. If they're dependent on another human, that's their primary person, probably not the best programs. for us. I've given you some MoCA and SLUM score and MMSE scores there. I know that you guys, those aren't what you use, but I think you can do the crosswalk. Again, we're looking for people who are in the early stages, early moderate stages, but functionally it's that give or take, that be able to engage in give or take conversation in a meaningful way. What's a wrong fit? Other neurological conditions. CST is a great program. Cognitive rehabilitation is for people with ABIs and strokes. CST is not cog rehab. And having a mixed, it's not the right program. So having someone with active hallucinations, that can be tough. That doesn't mean we can't take somebody with Lewy body, but it's just, it's just something that we have to monitor because it's a small group. And so we need to be conscious of all the members in the group. A big one, and we when we talk to people and screen them for CST, we actually, we say, the people in the group, the majority of the people in the group have a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment, Alzheimer's, Lewy body, or another form of dementia. Are you comfortable being in a group with other people, with these diagnoses, or with people who are experiencing cognitive changes? That's kind of our, we're not interested in a bait and switch with anybody. And so we want people to be comfortable. And that's also an opportunity for them to chime in and say, oh yeah, I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's or whatever. So we kind of use that as a screening question as well. But again, we want people to know what they're in for. Again, CST, we're not talking about, your stuff. To whom I may concern, we're going to end up sharing your stories publicly, but you don't have to be on stage if you want to. You can just contribute to the story writing process and have your experiences shared by somebody else. That's fine. Paranoia behavior that would prevent, safe participation, that's not the right fit. Again, somebody more in those middle, moderate, late moderate stages who are requiring more advanced support. We are not licensed to provide any hands-on care, and so people have to be independent in the bathroom or whatever. They can come with their aid, etc., but we can't actually provide that. And again, we need people, if they're doing a virtual program, we need them to actually be able to engage in a virtual group with either a tablet or a laptop. It doesn't work on an iPhone. It's just too small. And like I said, we need somebody who's not exit seeking. How do you refer people to us? We make it super easy for you. So here's a little QR code. We have an online form where you can refer people directly to our services. We try to take the burden off the care partner or the person living with dementia to contact us. And the way that we do that is through a direct referral. So when you fill out this direct referral or someone from your team fills out this direct referral, we're basically asking you to ask them, are they giving us both permission for CaringKind to reach out to them to engage in a dialogue about getting involved in services? That's how we do it. And we do. And so your referral comes in, we're going to follow up within 3 days. We have kind of a 4 strikes, you're out, and not really you're out, 4 strikes, and then we're calling you back to say, hey, we did our best to get a hold of this person, and we haven't been able to. But we do the due diligence to reach out to them, to schedule an appointment, et cetera. We even have kind of direct bookings. If you guys are interested, we can, tweak a form for you so you could directly book people into an appointment with one of our navigators to talk about that. But that's all I've got for today. I've given you lots of information, probably too much information, but you can access this information, and we're happy, to follow up with any questions or, on a case-by-case basis. You can always call and talk to us as well.